He called his own twins a curse and threw them out like they meant nothing. But what he didn't know was that the man who would find them next never forgives. Esther never imagined the night would end on her knees. The porch light above her flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the doorstep she once called home. In her arms, her twins clung to life, one crying softly, the other frighteningly still. Behind the door stood Paul. Not as a husband, not as a father, but as a man already walking away. His travel bag sat by his feet, his expression cold, untouched by the trembling woman before him. "They're a curse," he said, his voice flat, final. "And I won't let them ruin everything I've built." Esther's breath caught. "Paul, please, they need a hospital." The door slammed. No hesitation. No second glance. Just silence. Outside, the night swallowed her whole. Hours later, the city felt even colder. Cars rushed past. Strangers looked away. And Esther sat on the pavement outside a private hospital, her body shaking, her heart breaking, her babies slipping further from her grasp. Then, a sleek black car rolled to a stop. The engine didn't cut. The door didn't open. But inside, someone was watching. A man who owned more than the hospital behind her. A man who feared nothing. Until he saw her. And in that moment, something dangerous shifted. Welcome to Roses and Revolvers, where every story leaves a scar. If stories like this keep you on the edge of your seat, hit subscribe and comment where you are watching from, because the next one might be even darker. He called his twins a curse, but the man who found them would become his worst nightmare. Esther didn't scream when the door slammed. She couldn't. The sound didn't just echo through the quiet street, it echoed inside her chest, shattering something that would never be whole again. "Paul." Her voice came out broken, barely more than a whisper. She pressed her forehead against the cold wood, her fingers trembling as she knocked weakly. "Please, open the door. They're cold, they're sick." Inside, silence. No footsteps. No hesitation. Nothing. One of the twins whimpered softly in her arms, a fragile cry that felt too weak for a child so new to the world. The other lay still against her chest, too still. Panic surged. "No, no, baby, please." Esther shifted quickly, cradling the quiet twin closer, trying to feel warmth, breath, anything. Her own hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold them. A light flickered on inside the house. For a second, just 1 second, hope sparked. "Paul," she called again, louder this time, desperation breaking through. "I know you hear me, please." The curtain moved. A shadow passed by the window. Then the light went off. Just like that. Something inside Esther collapsed. Not just hope, something deeper. Something final. The night air wrapped around her like ice as reality settled in. He wasn't coming back. He wasn't opening that door. He had chosen this. He had chosen to let them die. Her breath came out in shaky gasps as she slowly pulled herself up from the ground. Her knees ached, her arms burned, but she didn't feel any of it, not really. All she felt was fear. Because the quiet twin hadn't moved. Not once. "Stay with me," she whispered, her voice trembling as she pressed her cheek against the baby's tiny face. "Please, don't leave me too." Her eyes started down the empty street. No cars. No people. No help. Just darkness. And time slipping away. Then, headlights appeared in the distance. A car. Fast. Too fast. Esther stumbled forward into the street, raising one trembling hand, desperation overriding fear. "Please," she cried out, her voice cracking. "Help us, please." The car didn't slow. It kept coming. Closer. Closer. For one terrifying second, she thought it wouldn't stop at all. And then, it screeched to a halt just inches from her. Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. The engine hummed low, like something alive, watching. Esther froze, her heart pounding wildly in her chest as the tinted window beside her began to slide down. slowly. And when she saw the man inside, her breath caught. Because the look in his eyes wasn't just curiosity. It was something far more terrifying. Something that made one thing painfully clear. This wasn't just help. This was the beginning of something she might never escape. The door hadn't just closed. It had erased everything. Esther stood frozen for a moment, the echo of that slam still ringing in her ears as if the house itself had rejected her. The warmth that once lived behind that door vanished instantly, leaving only the biting cold of the night wrapping around her and her children. "Paul, please," she tried again, her voice trembling, weaker now. She shifted one twin higher against her chest while the other remained limp in her arm, far too quiet. The door swung open suddenly. Hope exploded in her chest. But it died just as quickly. Paul stepped out, his face hard, eyes filled with irritation, not concern. In his hand was a bag. Not for them. For himself. "You're still here," he snapped, like she was the problem. Like she was something he needed to get rid of. Tears streamed down Esther's face. "They're sick, Paul. Look at them. Please, we need to go to the hospital. Just help me." "I told you already," he cut in coldly. "Those children are nothing but bad luck." Esther flinched like he had struck her. "They're your children," she whispered, her voice breaking. "No," Paul said flatly. "They're a mistake." The words hit harder than anything else. One of the twins let out a faint cry, almost like a protest, like a fragile fight to exist. Paul's jaw tightened. "I won't let them drag me down. I've worked too hard for my life to be ruined by this." Before Esther could react, he stepped forward, grabbed the small bag at her feet, the last of her belongings, and threw it down the steps. It burst open on impact, clothes spilling into the dirt. "Get out," he said, his tone final. "And don't come back." "Paul, please," she reached for him desperately, nearly losing her balance with the babies in her arms. "At least let them stay. They'll die out here." For a split second, something flickered in his eyes. Then it vanished. "Not my problem." And just like that, he turned his back on them. The door slammed again. Locked. This time forever. Esther collapsed to her knees, clutching her twins tightly as her sobs broke into the empty night. Her world wasn't falling apart anymore. It was gone. Completely gone. Then, the quiet twin didn't move. Not even a breath. Esther's heart stopped. "No, no, no, no," she gasped, shaking slightly, trying to wake the baby, her panic rising fast, uncontrollable. Nothing. The crying twins suddenly went silent too. And in that terrifying stillness, Esther realized something far worse than abandonment. She was running out of time. And there was no one left to save them. The night stretched endlessly, cold and unforgiving, as Esther stumbled down the empty street with her twins pressed tightly against her chest. Her legs felt weak, her breath uneven, but she couldn't stop. She didn't dare. "Stay with me, please, both of you," she whispered, her voice shaking as she adjusted them in her arms. The crying twins' voice had faded into soft, broken whimpers. The other. Still nothing. That silence was louder than anything. It clawed at her mind. "No, no, no," she murmured, panic rising again. She shifted the quiet baby closer, brushing her lips against the tiny forehead. Cold. Too cold. A sharp memory hit her nights she used to stay awake, watching them sleep, terrified of this exact moment. Back when she still had a bed. Back when she still had hope. Now she had nothing. Not even time. Her feet dragged across the pavement as she reached the main road. Cars rushed past, headlights blinding, engines roaring, life moving forward like she didn't exist. "Please," she cried, stepping closer to the edge of the road. "Please help me." A car sped by. Another. No one stopped. One driver slowed for a second, then accelerated, disappearing into the night. Esther's chest tightened, her vision blurring with tears. Somebody help my babies, she screamed, her voice cracking, raw with desperation. Please. The crying twin let out a weak, fading sound. Then coughed. A small, fragile cough that made Esther's heart lurch. It's okay, Mama's here, she said quickly, though her voice betrayed her. Her hands trembled as she tried to shield them from the cold with her own body. But it wasn't enough. Nothing she did was enough. Her knees buckled suddenly, and she collapsed onto the hard pavement with a sharp gasp. Pain shot through her, but she barely felt it. All she felt was fear. Because the quiet twin's head rolled slightly to the side. Too loose. Too still. No, please. Esther cried, shaking the baby gently now, her panic spiraling out of control. Wake up. Please wake up. Nothing. Not even a breath. Her entire world narrowed to that moment. To that terrifying stillness. I can't lose you. I can't, she choked, rocking slightly as tears poured uncontrollably down her face. Then, a deep rumble cut through the silence. Different. Louder. Closer. Headlights flooded over her, blinding and sudden. A black car. Slowing. Stopping. Right in front of her. Esther froze, her heart pounding violently as she looked up through her tears. The window began to slide down. Slowly. And as the shadowed figure inside came into view, her breath caught. Because something about him felt dangerous. And in that moment, she didn't know if she had just been saved, or if she had just fallen into something far worse. If you made it this far, you're not just watching, you're part of this story now. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. The window slid down halfway. Just enough for her to see him. Sharp features. Calm eyes. A face that carried no panic, no hesitation, only quiet control. He didn't look surprised to see a woman on her knees in the middle of the road, clutching 2 children like her life depended on it. He looked like he was assessing. Esther's throat tightened. Please, she whispered, her voice barely holding together. My babies, they're dying. The man didn't answer immediately. His gaze dropped to the twins. First, the one barely breathing. Then the one that wasn't moving at all. Something shifted in his expression, subtle, almost invisible. But it was there. A decision. He opened the door. The movement was slow, deliberate. Expensive shoes touched the pavement as he stepped out, his presence instantly swallowing the space around them. Even the night felt quieter. Esther's heart pounded harder. Please, she said again, her voice cracking as she tried to hold the babies closer. I don't have money, I don't have anything, but please just help them. Give me the child. The words were calm. Not loud. Not harsh. But they weren't a request. Esther froze. Her arms tightened instinctively around her twins, fear flashing across her face. No, I can't. If you wait any longer, he interrupted, his voice still even, you will lose one. Possibly both. The words hit like a blade. Clean. Precise. Terrifying. Esther's breath caught as her eyes dropped to the silent baby again. Her hands trembled violently now, torn between fear of this stranger and the reality already slipping through her fingers. Her voice broke. I don't even know you. You don't have time to, he replied. A beat of silence. Then, the quiet twin gave the faintest, weakest exhale. Barely there. But it was enough. Enough to shatter whatever hesitation she had left. With a sob, Esther carefully, reluctantly, extended the baby toward him. For a split second, her fingers didn't let go. Then they did. The man took the child with surprising care, his movements precise as he turned toward the car. Wait, Esther cried, panic surging instantly. Where are you taking? Inside. He didn't look back. Didn't explain. Didn't slow down. The back door of the car opened as if someone inside had been waiting. Esther scrambled to her feet, clutching the other twin tightly as fear clawed at her chest again. Please don't take my baby, she cried, stumbling after him. Please, I'm coming too. The man paused for just a fraction of a second, then glanced over his shoulder. And, for the first time, there was something unmistakable in his eyes. Not kindness. Not pity. Power. "Then keep up," he said coldly. And as he stepped into the car with her child, Esther realized something that made her blood run cold. This man wasn't just helping her. He was taking control. And she had just handed her child over to someone she couldn't stop. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and fear, a sharp, sterile scent that clawed at Esther's throat. The twins lay on the gurney, pale and trembling, their tiny chests rising and falling with shallow, uneven gasps. Doctors and nurses moved around them like a frenzied swarm, voices overlapping in clipped urgency, machines beeping, the world reduced to the rhythm of panic. Esther's hands shook as she tried to grasp each moment, each breath, as if sheer will could keep them alive. Tears blurred her vision, hot and unstoppable, running down her cheeks as she whispered their names, her voice cracking, barely audible over the chaos. "Please, don't leave me. Not now." Her knees buckled and she sank to the floor, heart pounding like a war drum, praying to some unseen god that her children would survive this night of terror. She had never felt so powerless, so raw, so stripped of control. John's shadow loomed over her, his own face a mask of tension and disbelief, but for once, he didn't flinch or look away. He stayed, unmoving, silent, a rock in the hurricane of flashing lights and urgent shouts. Esther barely noticed him at first, consumed by her own panic, until she felt the warmth of his hand on her shoulder. She looked up into his eyes, usually calm, guarded, untouchable, and saw something new, unshakable determination, a refusal to abandon them. "Esther," he said softly, his voice low but firm, a tether in the storm. "They're going to fight. They're strong. And so are we." But the world refused to slow. Monitors shrieked warnings, doctors barked orders, a nurse shouted for an ICU bed. Esther clung to John's hand as if letting go would mean losing everything. Her sobs grew heavier, her hope thinner, and still, he stayed, watching over her, over the twins, as if sheer presence could stave off the darkness. Minutes stretched like hours, every second a knife twisting deeper into her heart. And then a sudden alarm, louder than all the rest. Lights flashed red. A doctor's voice cut through the panic. "One twin's vitals are dropping, rapidly." Esther screamed, a raw, jagged sound that tore through the corridor. John's grip tightened, eyes snapping toward the bed, calculating, bracing. The world spun, blurred, heart-stopping, and in that instant, every ounce of fear, every prayer, every ounce of desperate love collided into one unbearable moment. Time froze. Breath held. And then silence. The machine beeped once, sharply, then went still. Her scream caught in her throat. John's hand trembled ever so slightly. The twins' fate hung by a thread, and in that sterile room, everything waited for the next heartbeat or the end. Stay with me until the end, because this story will shock you to the core. Before we continue, don't forget to like this video. Hit subscribe and comment where you're watching from. Now! John sat in the quiet of his study, the room thick with shadows, but the stillness felt heavier than any storm. The truth about Paul landed on him like a hammer, cold, brutal, unrelenting. Every detail he'd uncovered clawed at him, the lies, the betrayals, the calculated choices that had put his family in danger. His jaw tightened, fists clenched, a silent fury building like a pressure cooker ready to explode. He could feel the weight of what he'd ignored, what he'd trusted blindly. Paul had made his choice, and it had nearly cost everything: Esther, the twins, the fragile hope they'd held onto. John's calm anger was a strange thing, silent, deliberate, dangerous. It wasn't the frantic rage of a man losing control. It was the sharp, cold certainty of a man who knew exactly what had to be done. His mind raced, replaying conversations, every subtle hint he'd missed, every smile that had masked treachery. He saw the faces of the twins, still fragile in the hospital bed, and felt a surge of protective fire ignite deep inside him. Paul had gambled with their lives, and John's answer would be precise, unyielding. He moved with quiet purpose, setting plans into motion. Phone calls whispered in hushed tones, messages encrypted, arrangements made under the cover of darkness. Every step was calculated, each move designed to corner the man who thought he could outmaneuver fate itself. The calm in John's eyes was terrifying because it hid a storm that was about to break. Esther's calls went unanswered, her voice echoing in the distance like a fragile lifeline he could not yet afford to pick up. He couldn't let panic dictate action. Every decision had to be perfect. Every trap had to be airtight. Failure was no longer an option, not after the night in the hospital, not after the near loss of his children. And yet, as the night deepened, a shadow moved in the periphery, a whisper of betrayal that even John had not anticipated. A single message blinked on his phone, short, cryptic, "You're too late." His heart skipped. Fingers hovered over the screen. The air seemed to thicken, pressing against his chest. Someone had seen the plan. Someone had already moved. In that moment, John realized that Paul was not just a man who had chosen wrong, he was a man who had set something far more dangerous in motion, something that could undo everything John had fought to protect. And as he leaned back, tension coiling like a spring ready to snap, the phone buzzed again, this time with a location that made his blood run cold. The countdown had begun. The night was sharp, every shadow in the room stretched and twisted like a warning. Paul didn't see it coming, not the way John moved, not the inevitability of the trap closing around him. The confrontation was electric, a storm of tension that crackled in the air. Words cut like knives, accusations thrown with precision, the weight of years of lies and cruelty pressing down on him from every direction. "You thought you could break us," John said, voice low, controlled, carrying the chill of a man who had seen the edge and returned unbroken. "But you miscalculated." Paul's face twisted, rage and fear warring, his usual composure crumbling like brittle glass. He lashed out, wild and desperate, trying to reclaim a power that had already slipped through his fingers. Every command he barked, every threat he spat, fell flat against the wall of truth John had built. The lies, the betrayals, the calculated cruelty, they were all exposed, naked in the harsh light of consequence. Esther stepped forward, twins clinging to her sides, her own fear tempered by a new strength. She had watched her family teeter on the brink, had felt the cold hand of despair brush against her heart, but now she stood unshakable. Paul's presence, once a towering shadow over her life, now seemed small, impotent, meaningless. "You're done, Paul," she said, voice steady, unwavering. "No more lies. No more destruction. You lost everything the moment you chose cruelty over love." Paul's hands shook, a man unraveling, the walls closing in, the power he had wielded slipping like sand through his fingers. Phones buzzed, alarms rang his empire, the control he had clung to for so long was crumbling. His threats became stammered protests, his fury a hollow echo in a room that no longer feared him. Outside, the dawn began to breach the skyline, pale light spilling into the room like a promise. Esther breathed it in, her twins nestled against her, their eyes bright with hope and the first glimmer of safety. She felt the weight of years lift, replaced by the sweet, trembling possibility of a new life, unshackled, unbroken. But as she turned toward the door, ready to step into that fragile freedom, a cold, metallic hum froze her blood. The phone in John's pocket vibrated violently. A single, anonymous message glared on the screen. "You think it's over? It's only begun." And in that moment, the taste of victory turned bitter, leaving a shadow of dread that promised the next storm was already on its way.